explores how artificial intelligence is reshaping training, assessment, compliance, and integrity across the RTO sector. You will hear from Ben Thakkar, CEO of Vet Resources and Vet Advisory Group, bringing more than 15 years of RTO compliance and operational expertise. Alongside him is Marcus Xavier, AI Governor and Qualification Specialist, with deep experience in AI governance, instructional design, and accredited qualification development. This session focuses on real-world challenges and opportunities for RTOs, including governance, assessment integrity, compliance risks, and how to move beyond AI hype into sustainable value creation. Through Vet Advisory Group, we also support RTOs with ongoing compliance and operational readiness through our compliance retainer services, helping organizations stay audit-ready, reduce risk, and maintain strong regulatory alignment. Our EOFE offer has also been extended until 15 July, with up to 80% off on selected resources, including RPL kits starting from $120 and SCORM resources from $150. We'll begin shortly. Thank you for joining today's session. We're excited to have you with us. Welcome, and thank you for joining today's live webinar by Vet Resources. Today's session explores how artificial intelligence is reshaping training, assessment, compliance, and integrity across the RTO sector. You will hear from Ben Thakkar, CEO of Vet Resources and Vet Advisory Group, bringing more than 15 years of RTO compliance and operational expertise. Alongside him is Marcus Xavier, AI Governor and Qualification Specialist, with deep experience in AI governance, instructional design, and accredited qualification development. This session focuses on real-world challenges and opportunities for RTOs, including governance, assessment integrity, compliance risks, and how to move beyond AI hype into sustainable value creation. Through Vet Advisory Group, we also support RTOs with ongoing compliance and operational readiness through our compliance retainer services, helping organizations stay audit-ready, reduce risk, and maintain strong regulatory alignment. Our EOFE offer has also been extended until 15 July, with up to 80% off on selected resources, including RPL kits starting from $120 and SCORM resources from $150. We'll begin shortly. Thank you for joining today's session. We're excited to have you with us. Welcome, and thank you for joining today's live webinar by Vet Resources. Today's session explores how artificial intelligence is reshaping training, assessment, compliance, and integrity across the RTO sector. You will hear from Ben Thakkar, CEO of Vet Resources and Vet Advisory Group, bringing more than 15 years of RTO compliance and operational expertise. Alongside him is Marcus Xavier, AI Governor and Qualification Specialist, with deep experience in AI governance, instructional design, and accredited qualification development. This session focuses on real-world challenges and opportunities for RTOs, including governance, assessment integrity, compliance risks, and how to move beyond AI hype into sustainable value creation. Through Vet Advisory Group, we also support RTOs with ongoing compliance and operational readiness through our compliance retainer services, helping organizations stay audit-ready, reduce risk, and maintain strong regulatory alignment. Our EOFE offer has also been extended until 15 July, with up to 80% off on selected resources, including RPL kits starting from $120 and SCORM resources from $150. We'll begin shortly. Thank you for joining today's session. We're excited to have you with us. Welcome, and thank you for joining today's live webinar by Vet Resources. Today's session explores how artificial intelligence is reshaping training, assessment, compliance, and integrity across the RTO sector. You will hear from Ben Thakkar, CEO of Vet Resources and Vet Advisory Group, bringing more than 15 years of RTO compliance and operational expertise. Alongside him is Marcus Xavier, AI Governor and Qualification Specialist, with deep experience in AI governance, instructional design, and accredited qualification development. This session focuses on real-world challenges and opportunities for RTOs, including governance, assessment integrity, compliance risks, and how to move beyond AI hype into sustainable value creation. Through Vet Advisory Group, we also support RTOs with ongoing compliance and operational readiness through our compliance retainer services, helping organizations stay audit-ready, reduce risk, and maintain strong regulatory alignment. Our EOFE offer has also been extended until 15 July, with up to 80% off on selected resources, including RPL kits starting from $120 and SCORM resources from $150. We'll begin shortly. Thank you for joining today's session. We're excited to have you with us.
Hello, good morning, all, and welcome. Happy Friday. I think we'll wait for maybe a minute or two and see more people are joining in. Friday being Friday, everyone's catching up on their coffee and bringing in. So, meanwhile, you can, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, and we will try to take as much as towards the end. And we will begin the intro and the webinar maybe in a minute or two.
Friday morning, Neha. Very excited to hear from Marcus and Ben today. And yes, the AI session, we've got the highest number of registrations today. Let's see.
I believe so, yeah. Everybody's still maybe sleeping or what? I think it's the Victorian cold weather, at least. Rest of the states are still having a good weather, I'm sure. I think we shall begin. What do you think?
Let's start.
Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Again, good morning and welcome all and happy Friday. As we approach towards the last leg of the financial year, I'm sure things are quite tied up with all of you. Amidst that, thank you all for your presence and the questions throughout the year. This indicates that the effort and the insight team has been putting up are coming up really well together, and we are going in the right direction. I'm sure we're doing a pretty good job here. So even if you have any topics that you would like to discuss from the new financial year, we would be elated to have them on the board. Feel free to share your ideas in the chat box, email, which will be shared after the webinar. And before we begin the webinar, hopefully everyone or most of you have read the quality indicator summary report that we sent across yesterday, as the deadline is 30th of June if you're applicable for that. Now let's introduce our first knowledgeable guest on the webinar, which is Marcus Xavier. Maybe we can all clap for him. Hopefully. Great. I don't think so. Marcus needs a lot of or a big introduction, like a lot of people know about him, but still, I'm going to introduce him formally to everyone who's present over here. He's an experienced Australian vocational education and training professional with an extensive expertise in RTO compliance, training design, curriculum development, and quality assurance. Marcus also specializes in the practical application of artificial intelligence in education and workforce development, helping organizations integrate AI into the compliant and innovative learning solutions. Today, he will be sharing his insight on AI in education, training, and the future of RTO delivery in Australia. Please join me in welcoming Marcus. A huge round of applause. And another very good, interesting fact about him, he belongs to the happiest place on the earth. If you know the answer, please type in the chat box because I'm not going to answer that maybe towards the end. And let's see how many of you can get it correct, apart from our team who knows it. So they're disqualified from this question. And we have Ben Thakkar. Everyone knows him pretty well by now. He's the CEO of Vet Resources and Advisory and also the Stanford Institute. He is a leadership coach and a consultant with over 15 years of expertise in compliance, auditing, and many other areas. So towards the end of financial year, if you need any help in terms of your last minute works, feel free to reach out to us or to Ben directly. We would be happy to help you across. I would be handing over the presentation to Marcus now. He can, if he wants to introduce himself or begin the presentation, it's all up to you, Marcus.
Okay. Let me just make this work here. Neha, thank you so much for that. I'm going to share my screen, everybody, and then we can get moving on there. Okay. Neha, is that coming through okay now?
Yep. Yes. And if you need any help, Marcus, in between, feel free to call us, any one of us, if you get stuck anywhere or anything like that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Neha. Well, also, thank you for that lovely introduction as well. Also, thanks to the team for the invitation today to speak to everybody and share a little bit of my experience and my journey in these emerging technologies. Interestingly enough, we're talking about artificial intelligence now. I suspect there's probably people who are attending today that already know. And if that's the case, good to see you in all. I'm seeing anyway. Good to be presenting for you today. So this has been an interesting topic on here, and I was having a quick chat to the team this morning, and we're talking about where technology has come from. So just to get us started here, what I'd like to talk about. I know we're saying here beyond the gold rush. And that is interesting. And look, I will say that it's probably a phrase that I coined, in recent articles that I write, and I guess it's because I've been through a few of these technological revolutions. I remember, going through, and I'm going to show my age here now. I remember going through the when the internet very first started gathering ahead of steam, and and of course we all thought the world was going to stop, and everybody would be out of a job, and all those kind of things. And then, of course, then we moved into the blockchain revolution, and of course we came to the same thing. The world is going to stop, and things are going to change, and how things would sort of affect the work that we do, the jobs that we have, the businesses that we operate. And then, of course, now we've come to this AI revolution, and it's interesting that we should call it a revolution, and many do call it a revolution. But I was making the point earlier that AI is, and some of you may be aware of this, but AI has been around since the 1950s. And so this is not new, and there's been many films made about AI. And interestingly enough, artificial intelligence still functions predominantly the same way. So it hasn't really changed much. What's changed, of course, is their access to data, to information, to processing power, and our ability to, and our desire to really adopt and embrace more technology. So we're kind of at this point now when we're moving into AI. And I will talk about this a little bit later. This is not new, but we're moving into this sort of next generation of where emerging tech is coming from it. So it gives us some comfort that we've been through these other revolutions previously, and we've learned some things from those. And if we haven't, well, I guess we should. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as well, because I think it gives us some comfort into where we've been and where we're going. And it is really quite relevant. So let's talk a little bit about this, beyond the gold rush. One of the things I am going to talk about a bit today is sustainable value. And where I came across this whole notion of sustainable value was when I was working with blockchain, because I've been writing about blockchain and artificial intelligence for over 12 years, and working in this kind of space. And of course, working with a lot of angel investors, VCs, and institutional investors, and they used to tell me, Marcus, the two areas where where things seem to choke for for people that are looking for investors, and also to investors. Two key areas. One of them is understanding the technology. That's the first one. People don't have that real depth of understanding of the technology. They come up, hey, I've got an idea or an application, and away they go. The second thing is this statement that I'm making here, building sustainable value. It's how do we create value around the application of the particular technology. And today we're going to put that in the context of artificial intelligence. So at this point, I guess you're probably thinking, well, where does vocational training sort of sit in amongst this? And we've kind of got to go back to thinking, well, what is vocational training all about? And, it's making people, or it's getting people job ready. It's providing expertise and skills and knowledge for industry. And of course, we have this momentous change with AI, which is actually doing a lot of things that, I got to be honest with you, I think we're 5 years ahead of where I thought we would be. And so it's really important for us to understand if we're actually going to be developing materials and developing people from a vocational perspective, we need to be thinking how we build sustainable value. Now, as educators and probably and as RTO operators, we need to be thinking, okay, we're applying artificial intelligence in our own businesses. As educators, we're applying artificial intelligence in the work that we do every day. So we need to be thinking about this as well from the same perspective. So not only are we developing, sustainable value or creating value, for for our learners, but we're creating value for the institutions that we work with, and we're creating value for us as educators in here as well. And I have as this simple equation: what is value? What is value is solving problems. The bigger problems we solve, the greater the value is that we create. Okay, so that's just to give us a bit of preamble into where we're going to go with this and how I really want to take us through this today. I think Neha, I won't dwell on my credentials in there. I think Neha has given me a very good introduction there. I've been very involved both at an educational and also at a practical level with implementations, working with entrepreneurs within emerging technology, and these days more and more in artificial intelligence. I think the very first qualification that I wrote on artificial intelligence probably would have been 7 or 8 years ago, and in recent times, I've developed another 2 there. But it's from the perspective of applying. How do we apply artificial intelligence into the work that we do? And in understanding that, I think it's going to give us some great insights into where ASQA, our regulator, where ASQA is thinking and how this kind of works. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well, because we have these principles, and we call them AI principles. Sometimes you call, trustworthy and ethical principles of artificial intelligence. We have these things which have been in place for quite some time. And there's a number of derivatives of these around the world, but to be quite honest, they're all the same. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that as well today. That'll help us get an understanding. I suspect it's going to give us probably some comfort about, well, what is AI about and why? Why do we actually have to, and what is ASQA's probably concerns about, about compliance with it. So we'll talk a little bit about that today as well in here. Okay, so we know who our audience is today, so let's get jumping into this here, and we've got our little drone. Now, before we do, I've got a quick reality check, and I think this is good. I was doing a little bit of work with Future Skills last year, actually, and probably some of the year before it as well, where there's a lot of work being done on artificial intelligence, and there's quite a bit body of work done on how that fits in, not only with vocational training, but what are the real requirements from industry in there, and some really there's some real standout information came from that, and some real standout findings. And to be perfectly honest, I've actually built a couple of qualifications, designed a couple of qualifications around that, and but where it comes down to is where we stand in 26, and this is 26, 27, I would even say even in 2025 in here. Now, here's a couple of really scary statistics that we should really be taking, and I see there's some variations in these as you research around the world, but we're talking here there's 73% of job postings, now mandate AI literacy. I will talk a little bit later today about what does that mean? What is AI literacy? So I've seen numbers from 73% up through to 85%. But you know what? 73%, 80%, that's a lot. We've got 3/4 of the, job postings thereabouts. They're looking for people to have some form of AI literacy. Okay, so just lock that in the back of your mind. We need to address that. Now, here's another and I deal with this particular statistic, almost on a daily basis. 95% of professionals, they use AI on a daily basis. They'll be using it, create papers, do research, maybe, they might be solopreneurs and they're developing content. I know that in our businesses, we'll be using that for a lot. I know even in my own business, I have a range of bots that I use. I've even personalized them. I even get them to talk to each other. So we've got 95% of professionals, they're using it. But here's the kicker. Only 12% are actually truly proficient in how to use it. And I've seen so much evidence of this. So that's a far cry from nearly having, or everybody using it, professionals, but only 12% being proficient in it, So from an educator's perspective, that's smacks of opportunity. So there's a lot of opportunity for us there to develop learning materials and content, to lift that 12% up even higher. So we'll talk about that today, and you'll get an understanding, of how we might be able to do that. Now, this is a classic one. I've been through a few of these technological revolutions in here, and this is so true. The experimentation window has closed. So now people are used to using it. Look at that previous stat on there, 95% of professionals, and I don't know what the percentage of, general people in the workforce would be. It would be fairly high. Most people I talk to have used like the ChatGPT or some sort of generative AI tool in there to do something or other for them. So the experimentation window is closed, and so I guess there's a lot of people say, well, what else can we do? What can it do? And what do we need to do? And I think it's important to understand these things as educators, because our content's going to focus on this in the coming years, if not already. But also too, this is really important because it's going to reflect in what ASQA's requirements are going to be in terms of compliance. So we need to be thinking about these things. Now, I want to talk about these lessons from previous technology revolutions. And I have to say, it never ceases to amaze me. We go through these revolutions and, you're kind of always thinking, well, what did we learn, or did we learn anything from the previous revolution? So when the internet came, of course, we're going to have a paperless society, and of course we know what's happened. In fact, because we've been able to generate so much more information and data and so forth, our paper has probably increased, by 10 or by 100 or maybe even by 1,000 in some cases. So there's some lessons there. It was going to change the way that everything worked. Well, it changed the way a lot of things work. Did it change the way everything worked? No, it really didn't. The foundational concepts and principles still remain the same of how we do business, how we interact with each other. We just do it differently. Hold on to that thought, because when we start talking about, compliance issues, when we're looking at assessment materials, when we're looking actually assessing, and when we're looking at delivering, training, this is still the case, So we need to be thinking, okay, the same principles apply, but we're using different mechanisms to deliver those things. So this is what we're doing. It's very unlikely we will actually change it. These are the lessons that we've actually learned from these previous revolutions. If we have a look on a timeline here, we had the internet adoption, from 1995. Well, the internet came out in the late 80s, but then when we got to 1995 to 2005 there, we started looking at the internet was starting to become infrastructure. It hosted email. It hosted a number of applications, and I know one of my companies we developed, which was arguably, it was probably the largest e-commerce platform in Australia in those days. And so we moved, from adoption into infrastructure and application. So it became actual infrastructure. This is how it worked. So what did we learn from that? We learned that, hey, the world didn't stop, it changed. Did we have to change with it? Yes, we did. Did we actually do that? Yes, we did. So we moved on with things. And then we came up with the blockchain. And we're going to see this here we talk about blockchain hype. I remember going back to the internet adoption, we had the hype then how it was going to change the world. So we get these periods of hype, and then they're followed by, it goes into the doldrums, and of course, all the, people come out starting to come up with, solutions and applications and so forth. Interestingly enough, blockchain revolution really showed us what we had was solutions that were seeking problems, as opposed to, which I want to try and get across today. We really need to be thinking, how do we solve problems? How do we create value? So we don't want to use the technology for technology's sake. We want to use the technology as a mechanism to solve problems or create value. And of course, so here we are now. We've got AI adoption here, 2023 to 26. I think it's really interesting that we say it's 2023 when we know that AI has been around, since the 50s. We just haven't had the tools. We haven't had the compute power to be able to move it, and also access to all sorts of data and all sorts of information, about how this might work. Now, if you're a crystal ball gazer, like I am. That's kind of what I do. And here, I remember writing about, probably 14 years ago, writing about blockchain. And when I saw it, I saw this is we're going to capture all this data, but you know what? We know the provenance of that data and that information. And so the logical thing is, well, AI needs this data to actually function and to be able to give us output that we can trust and is reasonably reliable. But not only that, we train the AI on this data. So these things are not mutually exclusive. So if you have a look at those three that are up on the screen there now, we had the internet, which was a revolution, which gave us this capacity to share information and data very, very quickly right across the world. It was kind of boundaryless or borderless. Then we came into blockchain, where we had a mechanism which enabled us to process this information in a secure kind of environment, and we could distribute it and we could share it very, very, very quickly, and we knew we could actually trust the data that was coming out of it. Now we've moved into, in my mind, this is as far as my crystal ball goes, sorry guys, we've moved into this AI period here where we've got all this data and now we're working out, we've got the compute power and we're saying, hey, we can really do something with this, and it's moving at the speed of light, I will say. It's going very, very fast. So this is probably one of the areas where our regulators are concerned. It's moving very, very quickly. It's doing things that we probably really didn't expect it to do. Which brings me to this next point here. So this sort of central question is that, well, it should be really value first versus AI first. At the moment, I would dare to say that probably for most people, it's been AI first. It was like blockchain first. We've sort of got these solutions. We're looking for a problem. And it was very similar, with AI, so we've got this technology and it's kind of out there looking for a solution. But so let's just talk about, well, what does this actually mean? Okay, so AI first, it's technology seeking an application. Does it make sense? Probably not. Investors interested in that, they've learnt that this does not work because, we need to have sustainable value. Otherwise, we're investing in the hype. We're not investing in the value that it actually creates in something new. Now, value first is a very, very different, it's a very, very different fish. Strategic application of appropriate technology. Take that thinking into when we're actually designing training materials. This is what I do as an instructional designer. I look at strategically, well, what is the application of it? I know that in the space that I work in an applied space. Technology, the way that it's moving, the speed that it's working in, it moves at the speed of light now. So in my mind, we really need to be focused on what's the strategic application, or what is the application, of the technology in here. So we need to be thinking about that. For us as educators, we need to be thinking, because we've got to put ourselves in the place of learners. What are they learning? They're learning, okay, well, how do we apply this to create value? Okay, so I think that's really important. I suspect that one of the great fears from our regulator is that, we're designing or we're presenting things which actually doesn't really have application. As I suppose previously as an operator within RTOs and educators and so forth, and working with campuses and trainers, and also with industry as well, as we want people to actually come through who can actually do something which is not based on hype. They can actually do things. They have the skills and the knowledge to do things which actually has some substance and will actually be, as I've said in the last one, it'll be sustainable. So we have this kind of, what I've put together is, I call it the sustainability test. And we will talk about that at 2 points throughout this conversation. So you can see where we're going here now. We've seen we've got these evolutions of technology. They're all different, but you know what? They've all really been important to each other, and we've sort of been building on them to the point where here we are with artificial intelligence. They need each other from there. Okay, so what we're learning here, it's really not about the hype. It's really about, well, how does it create value for us? So we've got to move beyond this, beyond the hype is really what we've got to do. And so it's very, very exciting. I get to work in, and I've been working in spaces where I mean, I spent the last probably 6 months working in a space, in a private think tank with AI, where they're using tools. And what I'm seeing AI that actually thinks. It actually does things that, you kind of think, wow, it's starting to get a little bit creepy, to be perfectly honest. But also too, I'm working in a space where I know the area that I've been writing about here, it talks about things that how can we apply it. And I'm going to show you some of these are the key areas. And this is what I put in here and what I call the sustainability test in here. We've got operational efficiency. What does that mean? We want to know if we're actually going to apply artificial intelligence, that there's going to be some efficiency that it's going to create for us. And that efficiency comes through, it might be in dollars, it might be just in time. And both of those things, what I do know, dollars, you can always make more, you can get more, you can borrow more. Time, it's a finite resource. So don't underestimate, the value of time when we talk about these things. So operational efficiency. So one of the very first elements or pillars that we would probably think about when we're looking beyond hype is operational efficiency. Now, I'm going to talk about these things. I want to talk about these for a moment. Structural moats. Well, what does that mean? Proprietary. And I think this next part is really interesting. And I've been through this because I've owned and operated an internet-based e-commerce platform. To be perfectly honest, it was the largest e-commerce platform in Australia. And, so I kind of got a sense of how this actually works. So I'm going to talk from experience here. So we've got proprietary frameworks versus API dependency. Now, API is these, they're interfaces so that various softwares can talk to each other. Now, I'm going to introduce another concept here. And this is one thing that I hear a lot of and I see a lot of, where people think things are either or, it's black or it's white. Well, when we start coming into these emerging technologies, they're not. Okay, there's a lot of grey areas, there's a lot of interchangeover. In blockchain world, we call it interoperability, and that terminology is starting to move now into artificial intelligence as interoperability, where we don't actually, we're not integrated into other systems and softwares, we interoperate with them. So that being the case, you sort of need these APIs, so that way we can talk to other systems. Proprietary systems or proprietary frameworks is where you develop them yourself. So they're really made for you. Now, what I do know and what I'd suggest to you to take out of your thinking is it's either or. It's not. It may well be that, what may work for your organisation or an organisation, maybe that are clients of your RTO, may well be that they're thinking proprietary frameworks. They want it to be theirs, which is, it's a classic, I guess, a Western type of concept. We want to own everything and we're not terribly caring and sharing. If the one thing that the blockchain taught us is that we need to be caring and sharing. And now that we're working with AI, because the AI requires, a lot of interaction with data points and, and people who are actually doing things with real people. So we need to be sharing in there. So I think you're going to find that it's going to be a combination of these things where we've got, frameworks and things that would do the stuff that we want to do. And we may have that, let's call that our own internal softwares, might be something that we do. Interestingly enough, I'm seeing a lot of applications, a lot of AI applications, which actually do that. So you can actually tailor those to yourself and it will do things that you want it to do. Basically workflows. Some of you may have heard the terminology called vibe coding, and that's really what you're doing. You don't really need to write code. You can just tell it what it wants. It's like that episode of that movie called the Castle, where he talks about the vibe of the law. Well, that's a thing. It is a thing, in the AI world is a thing. We can talk to it and it will start understanding, well, what is it that we're trying to do? And then it will build it for us. So we can actually have these proprietary workflows. And so they're more so in applications. These days, we tend to talk more in workflows. But then we may need to talk to other things because we've got to get some information. We've got to get some data. We've got to share some stuff over here. Maybe we've got to interact or interoperate with the regulator, maybe, for example, or with industry, or with other educational institutions. So we then start needing these APIs. So just think beyond this hype. We've got operational efficiencies. We need to be thinking about our structural moats. And in an area which I'm doing a lot of work in at the moment is governance by design. So once we actually have these things happening, and particularly when we're talking about artificial intelligence, I mentioned before, there's some principles. There's principles, they call them AI principles, or sometimes they call the ethical and trustworthy use of principles behind artificial intelligence. There's a number of these. I believe there's about 5 sets of these around the world, and strangely enough, they're all the same, but I think people like to, and governments like to, and regulators like to kind of, own them themselves. So, but just be aware that these exist. But these provide us a framework. At this point in time, are they legislation? Are they cast in concrete? No, they're not. But they give us a framework for governance. And I'm just going to say there's a couple of things that they actually do. And there's all up, I think there's about 10 of them. But these days, they're now starting to condense these down, and they sort of join them together. I'm going to recommend to everybody that's on this session today that you should be looking up, get to understand, the principles of, or call the AI principles, or trustworthy, and ethical principles of artificial intelligence. Those 2 things, all roads will lead to Rome. That will give you a really good foundation of understanding of, how AI has actually been built and been designed, particularly at an enterprise level. These things AI is actually introduced, and these principles are actually introduced in the AI lifecycle right at the ideation. It's not later, that someone comes up and they build something, you're then going back and trying to backtrack over these. Once you understand these principles, I can almost guarantee you that you will understand where ASQA is coming from. Okay, so on the surface, we talk about, I know I've said it on another session where we spoke about, ASQA and their requirements. There's a lot of conversation there about privacy, and sharing data, and some of those things which are currently cast in legislation. But what is coming? What is coming is that these principles and standards, they're going to find their way into legislation, but they will give us a deeper understanding of why we actually have to comply with these things. Larger organizations and enterprises, they're actually designing, as I said before, at ideation stage. They're building these things and they're applying these on a day-to-day basis into the actual life of the artificial intelligence. So I won't talk too much about those, but they talk about in key areas, fairness and inclusiveness. So that way they've got to make sure that people aren't, artificial intelligence doesn't exclude people. An obvious example of how that happens today is in financial exclusion, economic exclusion. You get people that can't even get bank accounts. And if I tell you the statistics, you'd fall over. Globally, it's about 50% of the adult population on the world cannot get or don't have a bank account. And that brings with it a whole bunch of other social impacts. So we've got fairness and inclusiveness, reliability and safety. I guess to put it in simple terms, when you watch the sci-fi movies, people are thinking how the AI bots are going to come and kill us in our sleep. Well, they're not. And part and parcel of adopting and embracing, how we develop and how we deploy artificial intelligence, we actually build reliability. So it works the same way every time. And also, too, we've got safety in there. Systems in there, they got to perform safely so that people don't get hurt, whether that be physically, financially, because bearing in mind, there's still a lot of AI works in, in production, in manufacturing and those sorts of areas in there as well. Privacy and security, spoke about that at the last, I didn't, but the last speaker spoke about that very, very eloquently, at the last session in there. Transparency and explainability. As a developer and owning previously arguably probably one of the important tech companies in Australia at the time, transparency and explainability is really critical. The days of the black box are gone, and I'm going to talk about that briefly, particularly from an investor's perspective, but they're gone. So we need to know, and the reason why we need to know is because us humans, we're going to be held accountable and responsible, for what the AI does. So it's not good enough to turn around and say, well, that's the AI, there's a glitch in it. It's kind of like, when you're speeding and try and tell that to the officer that's pulled you over to give you a ticket. They're not really that interested, so you're speeding, and you're responsible, you're driving the car. So in this case, be aware that, transparency and explainability, we need to see that, because if something does go wrong, we need to know where we're going to go and fix it. And if it's in a workflow that we're doing, we need to understand how we're going to fix it. So we can translate that concept into our assessment design. We can translate that concept into our compliance, with the regulator as well. Accountability is a big one. Humans need to be accountable, and they are in these principles. Humans and the organisations, for that matter, they've got to take ultimate responsibility. So it's really important. And you'll find that in companies these days, particularly when investors are looking at it, and I suspect the regulators are going to be looking at this as well very, very closely, is that they want us to be accountable if we're actually going to be using artificial intelligence. And we need to be responsible for the outcomes. And then there's another area where we talk about social benefits. So what I would encourage you to do is go and do a little bit of research, grab a cup of coffee or whatever you like, and look at AI principles or trustworthy and ethical principles of artificial intelligence. You'll find it's really quite enlightening. Okay, now, what should we have learned? Okay, this is a blockchain cautionary tale. I love this one. And because sometimes, you kind of go, well, did we not learn something, from this last major revolution? This figure is a bit spongy, but, about 2.8 trillion market cap peak in there of what's flowing through blockchains. And so forth. These days with DeFi or decentralized finance, it's moving at the speed of light. It's moving through at, I would say, that figure would probably be a lot higher. But what else here? 99%. This is the one that really concerns me. This is the one where I actually do a lot of work. And you know what? This is the one that's just the easiest one to fix. So, which tells me we're still in the hype mode. Okay, so 99% of projects without sustainable revenue models. So we've come up with an idea. It's like we've got technology running around looking for a reason for being, instead of, hey, I've got this problem, how do I solve that? I mean, ASPA's already given us, a set of problems that we've actually got to solve. So we're looking at, well, how do we create assessment materials? How do we create assessments? How do we work with our students, who are using artificial intelligence? Trying to ban them from that is not the answer. In actual fact, you'll find it'll end up just being folly. We need to understand, and because AI is not going away, like everyone said with blockchain, it's not going away. Okay, so we've got 99% of projects without sustainable revenue models. So when we're thinking about, if you're looking at yourself as a solopreneur, if you're an educator, if you're an RTO, we need to be thinking about, okay, how I'm going to use artificial intelligence, to manage workflows, to do workflows. We need to be thinking along this line, okay, it needs to be sustainable in there. Okay, otherwise we're going to fall into this thing here called the narrative versus the utility gap. Basically what we're saying is, hey, here's the hype, this is what it can do. But the reality is, this is the utility gap, the utility of what we actually have to do. If I've got to turn around and spend, probably 10 hours a week on double checking what my AI does, or what the output is from my AI, it kind of defeats the purpose a bit, doesn't it? And that's sort of starting to tell me that, hey, maybe I've fallen into this, my workflows are, it's not sustainable. Don't forget, revenue can be time or money. Okay, so if I'm implementing or deploying artificial intelligence to save me time through workflows, it's the same kind of thing. Okay, so which comes to this last little point, I won't say the last point from my presentation, but this last point, why technical literacy actually really matters. You'll find that there's a couple of key things, and I know I write a lot about this, and it's about, technical, the literacy of, or let's say what AI actually does for us. It's great at this point in time for saving on processes and processes. The other thing we're using a lot more for decision making. Okay, so you get bad data, it's not working well. What's it tell us about the decisions in there? So literacy in how it works, it really matters. Otherwise, we're going to have decisions which are based on, on false premises in there. I think everyone would be familiar with the term AI hallucinations, where the AI is just making up stuff. Okay, now I've got to race into this now because I don't want to go my time, a lot of time in here. Now, new investment, the reality is tech savvy, and I think we need to be aware of this. This is important for us as operators, but it's also important. This is the world that our learners live in. Okay, they're trying to develop things in here. So investors, what are they looking for? They want people who actually have technical literacy. So excluding them from using AI and not teaching them how to use AI, we're doing them a disservice. And I dare say it's not going to be good for our organisations, our businesses. The post-crypto winter, after the blockchain and the crypto, that has come and gone. So investors are a lot more sophisticated now. So they're not interested in investing in hype. They'll do due diligence on your AI architecture, how you develop it. If we have a look at our materials, and this is what ASCA's having a really good peek at the moment, our materials, are we delivering the education we're supposed to deliver? And are they meeting, the rules of evidence and the principles of assessment? The black box days are gone, so we actually have to be transparent. We have to be able to demonstrate, the dots that you're joining and the way that things come together and they work. I do a lot of work in this area. We talk about actual business modeling in there. Okay, now I really want to talk about this. I'm going to be as quickly as I can. This, and you'll get these slides will be made available to you. So we've got the value audit in here. Now these are things that you should be thinking about in here. Okay, so if we're deploying AI into our RTO, and bearing in mind, this is what our learners are doing, okay? So we need to be thinking about this in here, and this is how we need to steer them. Otherwise, we're providing a disservice. Does it reduce delivery costs or enhance output quality? Is the value proprietary or easily replicated? Sometimes if it's just easily replicated, if they're just using, to be perfectly honest, if they're just using various, apps that are around the place, is it really AI? Is it really, revolutionising, our workflows? Probably not. Does it scale without proportional cost increase? Well-designed technology will do that. Okay, you can scale it, without significant cost increases. And the last one that we need to be concerned about: can we defend it to regulators? We know that that's a word that we use a lot when we're talking about regulators. We defend ourselves against the regulators. I've said it on various audits over the years, and I know we take a defensive posture on there. So this is kind of our, our audit. So those questions you can ask yourself, and we can work with it from there. Now, I want to go through this here quickly. We've got this new baseline. It's not the ceiling. This is the baseline in here. So from operational skill to performance prerequisite, this is when we're talking about AI literacy. So it's not an optional skill anymore. We know that, that probably 3/4 of the employers, I know if you go to the SEEK, the stats that they give me is that, people need to actually have some foundational understanding. They need to have some literacy in AI. And I suspect if you have literacy in AI, you need to have literacy in other emerging technologies because they all work together. We've got this, as I mentioned right up front there, we've got 95% of professionals using it, but the gap is only 12% of them are actually professional there. We need to future-proof ourselves. We need to career future-proof our learners. Okay, so, and not if we're developing materials. We know we've got a 5-year timeline on it, so we need to future-proof those. I know for me, it's been the nemesis for me when I'm writing in emerging technologies, so we need to work that, we need to be thinking future-proofing in there. So this AI literacy, it's the new baseline, okay? It's a baseline, it's not a series. This is what we must do, what we must have. Okay, we need to take it. So I know I'm getting close to my time. Apologies for that. We've got a lot to cover off today. So button pushing. Oh, I love this term. What real literacy really looks like in here. Okay, we need to have foundational frameworks. We need to understand what the technology does and how it functions. Do we need to be able to write code? No, we don't. But we need to understand how it works. Okay, it's like your car. Do you need to know how the carburetor? No, but we need to know that it has a carburetor. We need to know those things in here. We need to be able to critically evaluate it. And this is, I know most of you will probably be down this path. You know, you get some output from your AI bot or whatever, and then you spend your time interrogating it, making sure that I know in our think tank, we actually have days where we create new knowledge, we create new software, we create new applications, and then we create ways that we test it, and then we spend more time trying to break it, you know, and we actually get the AI to try and break these things as well. So we need to be able to critically evaluate it, and that's really important. Otherwise, you're going to have people who are just going to accept whatever it comes out is that's going to be the truth. Well, at this stage, it may be, it may not be. So, you know, this whole thing about relying on AI and it's going to take over the world and their jobs, it's just not true. Okay, so strategic application, it's got to solve some problems. Okay, so when we're actually designing, we need to architect these things that they build around it. Ethical governance in there. When we're talking about real literacy, you need to understand, or we need to understand, you know, the principles of AI and particularly trustworthy and ethical principles in here. So to make this teachable and accessible, what do? We've got to move from, and I've been through this because I've been writing, you know, qualifications here. We've got to move away from theoretical. What can it do? We've got to start then applying that. And you know what, as soon as we do that, we're going to solve a bunch of issues that ASPA has with us, because we're going to give them, well, not theoretical, these are practical applications, practical case studies that we're going to build our assessments around, and how they're going to integrate artificial intelligence in that. Role-specific skill mapping. Now, there's two sort of key buckets of roles when we're talking about artificial intelligence: technical, non-technical. You know, so that tells us there's some very specific skills mapping for us, you know, with our teaching staff, with our knowledge base, and also to, you know, when we're looking at our materials that we're putting out. Okay, assessment design in an AI-enabled world. Now, I'm just going to give you something that I think you should actually go and research. And if you all got a pencil handy, which I'm sure you do, there's a thing called the AI assessment scale, AIAS. I won't talk about that because I'm pretty much out of time, but I really think you should go and research that, because that will give you some key insights into, you know, how we should actually be embracing how we develop and design our AI enabled applications, particularly as educators in here. And if we do that, you'll find one of the components in there is maintaining academic integrity. And I know that's an issue that the regulator has with us as well. So go and look for them, do some research on them, have a cup of coffee, and I think it'll be time well spent. What we're doing here now, our challenge for us is to train leaders, not followers of machines, which, you know, the general population seems to feel that we follow machines. Well, you know, we don't. Okay, so in the early stages, you probably do, because we don't know how to lead them. So if we build our AI literacy, we'll actually move that way. And this is where, when we talk about cognitive science, where it meets practical application, what we're talking about here is how do we take the science of education and how do we apply that using artificial intelligence. You'll learn that as you work through there. And the question is can we do something versus should we do something? The real question is, should we do it? Okay, so that brings in these ethical components in there, because technology can do all sorts of stuff. Is the sorts of things we should be doing? Maybe not. Okay, so it's a good question. Can we do it? Yes, we can. Does it mean we have to do it? No, it doesn't. Okay, and ethics and business modeling integration. We move these in. We use the principles of trustworthy ethical AI. And the key thing we need to be doing is be thinking about business modeling. That's going to be a topic for a whole nother day. And but you can do a bit of research on that. I know I've recently written some articles on business modeling versus business planning. Okay. We've got to change the rules. AI, it changes the game. It certainly has done that, but we've got to change the rules around that, how we're actually going to deploy it and how we're going to use it. Okay, traditional assessment architecture, it is under pressure. Otherwise, why is ASQA, scratching around there? It's clearly that it has. And when I've been writing it, particularly in these areas, I know how it's changing, and I know that it is under pressure. And hence why I guess that ASQA's probably, canned a whole bunch of qualifications. The shift is moving away from detection. Those days are gone. That was a bit schoolboy stuff. So we don't want to detect that they're using it. We know they're using it, but what we need to do is, well, how do we design into there? Because what we want to do is we want to move synthetic content where students and learners are just generating AI-generated content. That's synthetic content. We want them to actually understand authentic competence or demonstrate authentic competency. So, and we can do that, if we get our design right. And so in getting our design right, understanding where it actually falls, where AI is actually impacting industry, our daily lives, education, and where that will actually solve a whole bunch of issues that ASQA has. And that will actually give us a level of comfort and will give us a bit of a framework to how we're going to approach it. Right. I think I got us there, Neha, and in the allotted time.
Wow, you were pretty good towards the end, I feel. I think you understood the whole time concept, and we didn't even have to interrupt you in between for that. So thank you so much, Marcus. I'm
My
sure
pleasure.
everyone enjoyed listening to you, and they could have got some great insights. Um, Before we move on to Ben's presentation and he would get an opportunity to speak, we don't have much time, so we would just be taking maybe one or two questions in the middle. And most of the questions that were pre-requested were related to the assessments. Like, can we use AI to mark the assessments? And I'm sure we have answered this question in the previous webinar as well, but people are so keen, or could be the new people who would be asking this question. So probably Ben or Marcus, whosoever feels more comfortable answering this question in relations to AI market when it comes to assessment and trainers.
Would you like to take that one, Ben?
Yeah, okay, I'll take it, and if you want to add on, you can add as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Like I will connect this to ASQA's AI principle, which we discussed last webinar. Again, ASQA is not saying we cannot use AI in any instance. What they're saying is that ultimately human need to be responsible when that judgment needs to be verified. And I think Marcus was saying the same thing, is we cannot rely on AI. AI make mistakes, and even that every AI model bottom line is always there. So yes, you can utilize the tool, and I have seen some LMS also doing that as well. But ultimately, the assessor need to check and verify that the feedback or marking that be given is that accurate or not.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Ben, I'll do this very quickly. I think particularly at some of the certificate levels where where they're almost list based, I think there's some things that the AI can actually quite easily and cover off. And then of course as you get more complex and we can do this. This is where I think the design of the materials is really important. When we start moving away from knowledge and we start moving into skills, this is where they will really have to demonstrate. This is where it becomes more important for us to to craft those assessment materials so that way they can actually demonstrate their actual competency.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben and Marcus. And I think pretty much all the questions that were sent before were related to the same topic. So if you've got any new questions, feel free to put it in the chat box. Meanwhile, we'll just start with Ben's presentation, and all over to you, Ben, now.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Marcus. That was amazing information. I think I learned so many things around it. It gave me so much perspective of what happened in the previous era as well. So thank you so much for that. And as Marcus said, today we're talking about the AI. And what I see is any technology or anything which we learn, we also need to learn the fundamentals of it. If I don't know the fundamental of the system, I will not able to use them very well. As same is if we know about the fundamental of how we're using the AI in a training and assessment, we will able to get a better output from it. So what I see that AI in training and assessment, yes, that can be utilized, but we need to understand the fundamentals, how the assessment and training works. Do we have a deeper understanding of the subject? Because if I just put random thing, it will give me all the random information from the internet. Because on the internet, there is no restriction that who can add the information, who cannot. What is the truthful information, what is not truthful. So sometimes what the AI model do, because they also refer quick 5-7 website and just put the reference and put the information, that doesn't mean that is the right thing. So what I think that all of us, we need to learn how to understand the fundamental of the AI technology, how it get the best output, what are the queries or situation we need to create, even within the bot, how we can create an integrated bot which actually specifically working to the particular task that you have given. And then I think if you utilize it very well, we will be able to get the good output. And as a RTO owner, CEO, manager, all of us, like myself also, I spend a good amount of time to learn and understand how each tool works. And the challenge is I was seeing in the messages, every week is something new. Every week is something different coming up. Every week is new model. Every week is this, okay, this is the new video app. This is this. What I always say, it sometimes overwhelm all of us, and it did do to me as well. So what I will say, okay, what is the most important thing for my role at the moment? And I'll just tackle one thing at a time. Because if I hear all the noise of all the tools and things, which sometimes overwhelm us and we don't even start. So as Marcus was saying, that we need to see how it's saving our time, energy, and saving the money. Identify those tasks first and try to tackle them rather than try to understand everything. Okay, so let me share my screen before I start that part. Okay. You able to see the screen?
Yes, Ben, we can see it. It's visible now.
Okay, great. So 80% plus students are using AI assessment, and this is just a survey been done. If it's been done in VET or anywhere else, it could be more. But that's some statistic that we have around that area. 69% RTO fail in audit in the training and assessment. And this is consistent in last 5 years. So this is something significant as well. And today we'll find out that why this 69% and what can we do, how can we use AI in training and assessment. Okay, so what we're covering today, just give you a bit sector update. What I think in around 10th of June, you might have received an email from ESQA about the qualification cancellation and what ESQA expect all of RTO to do. So which we'll discuss that and then give some free tool how to utilize it and how can you integrate that into your RTO system. Number one, audit failure. Why AI is making training and assessment non-compliance worse? Because if it's not handled well, it can make it even worse as well. Student AI use and assessment integrity. What ESQA is actively looking at it. That's number one, as ESQA said in the workshop as well. So as an RTO, if that is a priority for ESQA, it's priority for us as well. And that's something we need to make sure that we tackle that. How to use AI in training and assessment, the right way, the wrong way, and what are the tools that are available that we can utilize that will save the time, energy, and effort. The professional workflow, AI as a starting point, as we said, that human needs to validate and owns it because AI make mistakes. And 3 non-negotiable, what ESQA expect under the new standard. And as usual, we give some free resources that will help you that we using in our organization to help the client. So it will save some of your time and you're able to utilize those tools. Okay, let's have a quick poll. In your RTO right now, where does your biggest compliance risk sit? So let's have a quick poll. I think I have only 20 minutes. I'll just wait for 15, 20 seconds. Let's see what the response is coming up. Okay. Okay, I can see some 6 response. I think it's 23 now, so it's much better, I think. Thank you, everyone. I think who putting it 40 responses. I get around 47% people is saying D. 23% is training and assessment design. So overall, we're seeing that are approximately 40% or more people around all the area. So thank you for that. It gives us some sort of idea as well. It also gives us the idea what people looking for it. So it helps us to get the another session aligned to that, which we will be able to help you. Okay, so yes, that is the challenge. Student AI use training and assessment and the qualification as well. So we'll discuss all of them today. So this is the sector update. ASQA has canceled, I think, 45,000 plus qualification that include the TAE. I'm going to cover majorly the TAE because I think that's the biggest impact within the RTO. So there's 2 RTO being canceled, and there's good amount of certificate being canceled for I think 2 to 3 years. Because it's training and assessment qualification, it also affect the RTO, and the student have been trained under those qualification as well. And ASQA is suggesting that what we need to do. So why it's matter to your RTO? If we have any credit transfer from any canceled qualification, we need to check. So we tell the RTO, open up all your credit transfer, starting with the current student, or within the 6 month of time. If there any qualification that cancel that you have given credit transfer, you need to reassess them, because that's what ASQA says so in the email. Trainer and assessor with cancel qualification cannot deliver an assess. So we have seen in the lots of audit and internal audit, and we find out that the TA qualification that trainer has, it's no longer valid because it's canceled. And therefore, that one example we had is in the audit, the trainer qualification certificate 3 in carpentry also got cancelled, and certificate for training and assessment also got cancelled. And when we check the impact, that trainer actually have been trained by 200 students. So now you see it's a real big risk aligned to that area, because both qualification being cancelled. Now what ASQA is saying, we need to assess all those students that affected and identify what are the gaps, and if it's required to reassess, we need to reassess as well. So this, if he's been affected in your RTO, make sure you check that process, identify what are the issues, put it in your continuous improvement, and if it's a bigger impact, you also notify ASQA as well. New trainer must not commence or cancel on cancel credentials. So you need to have your recruitment process very strong as well, because if you let the new trainer, then it can create a problem in the audit. We seeing that ASQA auditor is actively seeking this. Even not only this, even though some valid certificate has RPL in it, and that trainer and assessor does not have any relevant experience, they also question mark that how that trainer actually get this RPL. And even if the RPL done in a very short period of time, let's say in 15 days or 20 days, and some of them sometimes we have seen that the RPL finish in within the same day. So they also check all those things and question mark that how did you check your self-assurance process in this? So what I suggest that RTO to have a look into that area, not today, maybe Monday, but check this area. It's a very, very important one. You will say thank you to me in your next audit. Okay, 3 actions that need to take effectively, very quickly. We just need to identify the certificate, identify student with credit transfer, and arrange them reassessment or RPL if they have experience. And we need to constantly check ASQA qualification integrity page because that's an ongoing process. We must check it before you do anything with the trainer. We're going to give you free trainer hire checklist. So that checklist will help you what to check, what not to check, and so on. And that's something which will help you, and we will give you as free resources today. Okay. So as I said that the assessment and non-compliance is consistent across approximately 69%. Registration renewal also getting rejected, more than 32 registration been rejected. And qualification issue without proper competency is that what ASQA is concerned at this stage, and that's what we need to understand as well. Under the 2025 standards, the standard 1.1, the training not structure or pace to support genuine skill attainment. This is very important, and with the new standard is now very clear how that training need to be structured. So we need to give them a training, including practical training, then give them the time to digest, and then we need to do the assessment part. So it should be structured and it should be very clearly documented. 1.3, we need to review our assessment tools and also sometimes learner resources, because if it's not matching to each other, it also give you a non-compliance. I know RTO is doing it, but they're using tick and flick approach. When you're actually checking one unit, there's still a lot of gap. So that's gonna fail in the audit as well. 1.4, I think, as you said, the main assessment part. Authenticity is the big concern with AI integrity. Those are the thing area which we see the common non-compliances in the new standard. Apart from that, we have trainer currency and few other area, but those three are the major ones. Okay, and AI has made one of this problem worse, especially the online and remote cohort. So especially if some RTO has online and remote cohort, authenticity become a bigger issue as well. And then we'll discuss in the later slide that, okay, what can we do in that stage, at that stage. If your students submit an AI generated response, the data says 80% of teachers reported the student use AI to complete assessment. 67% Australian university student actively using generative AI, and that could be more. This is just a survey data that they have identified, and VET student are no different. We know that VET student using a lot more AI as well. So that's just something we need to be mindful. Why this is an ASQA focus right now? Again, we discussed that authenticity, academic integrity, and what regulator wants to see that is actually genuine student work. Student has the knowledge and skill rather than just copy pasting from AI. And sometimes they also bypass the authenticity tool as well by doing a humanizer and this and that and other part. And that's why we need to have a multi-layer system rather than rely on just one tool like by Grammarly or any other things. 1.4, validity evidence must be adequate to assure that student possess the skill and knowledge. That's also one of the area. And 1.3, we need to make sure the assessment tool reviewed prior to use. And knowledge question answered by AI in 30 seconds is not valid and authentic under 1.4. Okay, let's move to the next slide. The remote and online cohort highest risk. Why? Because there is no face-to-face interaction. And also we have seen some online cohort doesn't even have a trainer access or live trainer access in that case, because that where it's very difficult to identify the authenticity, and that's the area that will be high risk. Because no in-person verification, submission completed outside supervised environment, and AI detection tool are not a solution. false positive and fairness issues still happen. Let's go to the next slide. What to do? Redesign the knowledge question, add oral follow-up, scenario application, supervisor sign-off. If you find out that the knowledge question is the major concern, so we need to think different way and say, okay, now how can we check is the student has the knowledge and skill, rather than just rely on an oral question of not only knowledge question, theory question, which student use AI to do it. And even if you use the knowledge question, then you have a multi-layer authenticity measures process. So you can verify all those things. And if it's find out in the audit, you clearly explain that these are the process you have, and this is the way you identify any AI detections or any of those things. Document your authenticity verification method for every assessment task. Because what happened in the audit, if they pick up any student file randomly, let's say 5 students, and if an auditor see that it's a very well written, structured with comma, all the dots, everything perfect, they're gonna ask a question that, okay, what processes have you done to identify that this is not a plagiarism, this is not AI related work, all those things. And then you need to show that evidence for each individual student as well. So that's what the process we need to follow and make sure the evidence is also available. Implement a student use AI policy. So we need to notify student how or which way you can use AI and where you cannot use the AI. Whole time, quickly. How does your RTO verify online or remote student work? Is there a student's own? So what are the strategies that you guys or RTO following? Maybe would love to see that part. Okay, we got 12 responses, 34. Okay, great. We have 53. I think almost A and C go close by. It's a student declaration and oral questioning. I think they are the one on the top. I think great. I think that's the important part, and I think around that RTO is doing it. So it's good to hear that. And if you don't, then you need to have a set structure around that. So what auditor wants to see is that you have a structured process and that integrate into your systems. So if they ask the question to trainer, they will be able to answer. If they want to see the evidence, then be able to produce the evidence. So it's just more sort of consistency across what we do. Okay, so AI use wrong is a compliance risk. AI use right is your best resource developer. As I said before, we need to learn the fundamentals of it. So then be able to utilize the technology in a better way. What AI can do, it can draft unit aligned learner guide, study notes, explainer content, build session plan, trainer notes, create activity case studies, classroom scenario. Again, like I said, it can do it. Doesn't mean everybody able to do it. It depends on your skill set of the particular unit or particular topic, and also your skill set on how you're using AI. Assessment design, draft knowledge question, map to the element and performance criteria, generate marking guide, model answer, create oral question bank to supplement the written task. It can do all those things. A trainer support, map content to unit of competency requirement, identify the gap, generate industry currency research summary, draft RPL evidence guide, and feedback template. So those are the things that AI can be utilized, and you can also think of any of those things that AI can do. So what we're seeing here, that if we utilize the AI, it can speed up the process, it can save the time, it sometimes, and also save the cost as well. But we need to learn how to use that, and also we need to have that knowledge of the subject. If somebody do not know about at carpentry and they're writing about carpentry, sometimes the information that AI gets wrong. And if it's find out in the audit, it can get non-compliance, and also it can create a trouble. Okay, what AI cannot do: understand training package requirement without correct input, apply the rules of evidence, it cannot assess authenticity, generate accuracy, hallucinate facts, unit code, legislation. We all know AI make mistakes. Replace a qualified assessed judgment ever. So what we all say, and that we seen on the Ask AI principle, is yes, you can utilize those tools to speed up the process, but the subject matter expert or people who understand that, they need to review and make that human judgment, and after that you should pass it through into implementation. AI output is a starting point. Every output must be reviewed, validated, and signed off by a qualified human. Okay, so I just want to ask you anyone a question. So if when you type a first prompt in any AI, what do we usually get? Is there we get the best output, or what type of output we usually get? I just want to know if there's somebody wants to answer that. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, Ben.
Okay. Okay, so
I think
because
some
first,
people have already answered in the
yeah, I can see
chat.
first output is always a draft, generally not the best output, never in the first go, very generic, basic response. Great. So what it usually happen when we type any prompt, which is if it's generic prompt, it just go to the relevant, like whatever the easy accessible website that they can see. And AI sometimes don't even check is there a right information or wrong information, and it just summarize that way. Then after, it's just a starting point. If I know the subject very well, then I say, oh no, but this is not right, this is wrong, I want you to add those 3 more things. I think I have seen this in the audit, so we need to add those points. And that's how you need to build up from there. So don't consider AI as a final output. AI consider AI as a starting point. You adding your skills and informations and learning to make this whatever the documents are output better. So that's something I want you to emphasize, that we need to do this. Otherwise, the output that you will get will always have a problem. And then you will see the problem in the audit or any other area as well. AI is your coworker, not your replacement. So what the process we follow here in Vet Resources when we develop the resources is, the writer drafts AI as a starting point, unit code, element, performance criteria, knowledge, evidence, all feed in as an input. Then we do internal validation, accuracy, structure, training, package alignment. This is done by human. We do the gap analysis, every element, PC, knowledge, evidence mapped and verified. Then we do subject matter expert check, industry accuracy confirmed by a subject matter expert. Gap filling, is there any gap filling? Because sometimes this is the right, but we don't do this way in current industry. We're actually doing this part first and then this part, and this is how we do it. So we collect the feedback from subject matter expert, then we do the gap filling part, and then it's a final training package check, and then it goes out. If we only do a writer part and do not check all those area, there will be a gap, and there will be a problem in the audit, and there will be issues happen where the certificate will be recalled. the assessment this completed by student is not properly, therefore the issue in the integrity and also certificate issue, we might need to recall the certificate or retrain the student and all those things. And also we as an RTO, we need to know that we now need to keep the assessment record for 2 years from the completion as well, so that the span of the record retaining is also high as well. Okay, so we'll cover up quickly tool for VET that worth for using is for writing ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Gemini. Is anyone using anything else which is good one? I can if you can put it in comment, we all learn from this as well. So the drafting resources, the test assessment question, session plan, the research or fact-based Perplexity AI because it has a online website checking, check the correct references and so on. The verifying claims, video creation, we can use Synthesia, HeyGen, if we want to create a training video or induction content. The screen explainer, the script Bloom, the quick trainer recorded content if you want to utilize that way. If you want a visual, we can use Canva, AI detection, Turnitin, GPT-0, Copylix. Some people use Grammarly as well. And then transcription, Otter AI. There are many AI tools. And I give you one real example. One of the client were saying, yeah, I don't want to type all those things. I don't want to write all those things, which when I taking an RPL interview of the candidate, especially it's a competency conversation. So they're using this AI bot to record all those things. And at the end, they utilize that information and then integrate into RPL. That way it saves the time. And it also able to capture all those information which is required. So what happened in the audit, especially in RPL, because it's a very important area that ESCO is looking for it, they're not getting the sufficient information. So this way it helps if you're doing an RPL interview as well. So let's go to the next slide. 3 things ESCO expect us to make it right. The student AI use policy, what is permitted, what is prohibited, what are the consequences. We also need to have staff and trainer AI use policy, because if we don't know what is right or what is wrong, or if there is no structure or training around that area, then all the staff will do however they want. And as we have discussed in the previous webinar as well, if they're using a free tool and feeding the student data, a name or any other thing, then it's not private. You can have a privacy issue and all other things as well. So you need to have a strict guideline around that area. Both must have current dated review and sign off. So this is something which you need to do. And that's why we are giving you a policy, AI policy as part of free resources. It's a good starting point, but you can review and customize according to your RTO. Assessment design. So as we discussed before, review every tool before use. It's a part of requirement. 1.4, every task must satisfy valid, reliable, flexible, and fair. Redesign where needed. Oral question, live demo, supervisor sign off. If you're seeing that the only written word is the concern. And a student declaration is not an authenticity assurance. Yes, declaration is okay and important, but again, if they still use AI-based content, it's not gonna save you. The RTO need to have their internal processes and system to identify that. And if you identify, then you need to have structure that they need to do reassessments and so on and on. Okay. Self-assurance, document every AI compliance decision. If you can't show ESCO the paper trail, it didn't happen. Independently verify all the trainer and assessor qualification, as we just discussed, very important. Take this away and use this week. AI policy and trainer credential verification check. You will get it in the email. I think team will send it to you. Okay, here is matter the most. Assessment, training and assessment still number one compliance risk, and AI just raised the stake. If we not utilize very well, it can also create much more compliance problem as well. And if it's used very well and verified and identified and also been checked and validated properly, it can be helpful. And also it can create so many opportunities to integrate, and the student also can learn a new ways as well, because then AI can open up so many possibility of how do you assess and create practical environment as well. AI hasn't created this problem, it has exposed and amplified. So what we using currently in RTOs or VET system is the 10-20 years old system. And with this AI now, we all need to think that now, do I need to upgrade my assessment structure? So it's gonna meet the new technology requirement, and we all need to ask. And that's what we're doing internally as well in a team that, okay, we using the knowledge-based structure, which maybe I started when in the industry 16 years ago, that was the same thing. Now with this new AI and changes, do we need to reassess that part? Do we need to change it? And online and remote cohort are the highest risk. So if you focus on all those three areas, I think that would be a great start for from Monday. Okay, AI is a starting point, never the final product. We discuss every AI output must pass through a qualified human. One for require assessor to ensure the authenticity. Use AI to draft, design, and accelerate, but always validate. Three things action this week. Policy, student AI policy, staff AI policy, something that you need to have it, you must have it. And if you don't have it, you don't have a standard, you don't have a processes, and it can create a problem. Assessment, review your tool, student work, implement AI policy. And document every decision as per expect a paper trail or a digital trail, not exactly the paper. That's it. I know it's a bit quicker than I expected. Usually I want to explain much more detail, but the amount of content I have, I had to go a little bit faster. So I apologize for that. I hand it over to Nehana.
Thank you so much, Ben. I'm sure towards the end we always rush, but we want to make sure that we cover as much as we can. I think one of the not contestants, but the people here, Holly May, she has been either raising her hand quite often or saying hi. I'm not sure. So, Arpit or Aman, if you can unmute her, I think she has a question to ask. Can you figure her out, or do you want me to type the name? It's Holly May, Holly.
Are you talking about Holly? We have
Yes.
already given the chance to Holly. If she wants to unmute, she can probably do that.
Oh, she doesn't have any question because she was raising her hand quite often. So I was like, she wanted to ask a question. We've got a couple of the questions, so maybe we'll take one or two to make sure that we fit in the time. And any question which are not done, we will probably make a video out of that. So the first question that was asked was, is a declaration sufficient based on the AI risk?
Okay, I think I covered that in the slide as well. It's not sufficient. Ultimately, it's an RTO responsibility to make sure that the assessment or any student work that we signing off as a competent, it should go through the plagiarism, collision, and AI detection, and we need to be confident around it.
Great. Another question that is, can we allow use of AI simulator to record the role plays to eliminate the need of volunteers?
Marcus, you want to go for it?
Do you want me to repeat the question or?
No, I got the question there. Now. I think it's a really good question. I would probably say at this point in time that I'd be more inclined to have it validated properly, the technology is very, very good. And, but I mean, having said that, it's a two-edged sword. The technology is so good, you can create avatars and, and feed them with text and you can get an output. And sometimes it's very, very difficult to tell whether it is or not. It becomes very one-dimensional as well, whereas you don't have the opportunity to question them, which I think in that instance, I would be probably more inclined to want to ask a few more questions, if I saw that type of submission coming to me.
Great, thank you. And the last question for today is, in relation to the document verification method for every assessment task, is this written into every assessment tool as to how this is to be verified, or does it only relate to written assessment task and does not have to be included in observations or practical assessment tools? I can probably put the question here in the chat as well.
Okay. Okay, I'll go first and then Marcus, you can add on as well.
Okay.
So number one, ultimately, it's our responsibility that the student work that is their own, not being written by AI. So it's certainly not only for the knowledge evidence. Definitely it's knowledge evidence, but if you have a project or a template that you want student to fill it up, we all need to make sure that we have seen that even if there is a practical, but practical require them to complete one template, and that template they have used AI. So that's the thing, that ultimately any piece of document that students submit, that we need to check it's not been generated by AI. And that's the simple answer. It goes across the board.
Yeah, if I can add on to that there too, Ben, I think that's absolutely correct. I think one of the things that I see coming is that the days of when we were asking them to fill out templates, there'll be occasions where that is maybe it's a requirement, in the actual in the actual unit. But I think we might see that type of submission change. We may have to be thinking about other ways of actually testing, for evidence, in some of these things. So how it is. We've been, as you said before, been 20-something years, that we've been using these particular systems. We're now at a point in time where we really need to be sort of rethinking, the architecture of our assessments, how we actually, test these. Because you're absolutely correct. It's a very simple process to get the AI just to fill out the template. So maybe we've got to be a bit more creative as to, what are we really wanting them to, to achieve. If they were going to use, a template, it's very simple. Well, send me the prompt, send me the output, and let me assess that, and so that way I can have a look at the output, the AI that you used, the prompt that you used, and ask some questions about maybe the prompt. And because then sometimes it's, well, what am I really testing? Am I testing how do you fill out a form? Am I testing have you learned a process to be able to fill out forms? So I think, there's occasions when you it could be either or. So I think we're at this juncture, where we're thinking more about and more closely about our assessments and what are we really testing for? What evidence are we really looking for?
Thank you so much. And the last question for today is, how can trainers reliably distinguish between AI-assisted work and a student's genuine competency without relying solely on AI detection tools?
Okay. Marcus, you want to go or do you want me to go first?
Oh, no, well, I'll have a first pass if you like, Ben. I think when you're working closely with, and once again, sometimes it comes down to the actual unit that you're assessing. I suppose the lower qualifications where more list-based and so forth, it's a little bit easier, but it's a little bit more difficult to detect. But when you get to the higher qualifications, where they actually have to explain things, they have to think creatively, they have to think critically about things. If you're working with your students, they may get through the first unit. The second unit, how they talk, how they're speaking. I'm only saying this as pros doing years in education, but you get to see very clearly this is not their language. The other interesting thing is, with most AI output, and we found this previously, when we're looking at plagiarism, you see various things coming out, and you've seen this before, and you've heard it before, and it's not it's actually not their work. Sometimes it's just not their language. They're not describing things in their language, or sometimes if they use a bad prompt as well, it's almost like if they're at a diploma level but they're answering at a postgrad level, and you kind of go, it's not even the question that's been answered. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I think I consider the AI integrity is kind of a layered approach. What I see, the layer one is your detection tool. Could we have a Turnitin, could we have copy leaks or any of those things, and that they are also not perfect. There are so many times the student being smart, say they're using humanizer, this, that, and other tools, and then it passed through that layer one. Then it's come to the layer two, which is Marcus saying that we implement that into RTO as well. Said, okay, if they pass the layer one, it doesn't mean everything is okay. Then in the layer two, which comes to the human part, and then you say, as an assessor, you need to see that if he's a level 3 student, if they're writing and if they are from their English is the second or third language, and if they write everything perfectly with the comma and dot, I would doubt this, and I might ask them for an oral question. So what I see, we always tell assessor that don't rely on that. Yes, there is a good important tool, because then at least you filter out 50-60%. You don't need to check every single one like that. But then you check this way, and if you see that it's not the student word, doesn't look like this student doesn't have that much capacity to write it, then I will go and ask the oral question to the student, and based on 1 or 2 questions, said, okay, I made a judgment that this is not your own work, and that's why I'm making you non-satisfactory for this particular task, and then you go from there. So hopefully able to answer the question.
Hopefully. I think there were a lot of questions related to the assessment, so probably we won't be able to take up each and every one as we've run out of time. But feel free to send.
Neha, still there's a very, I guess it's an important question, and everyone might be wondering. Some trainer from Contempo College has asked this. Thank you so much for asking this. Ben and Marcus, this question says, do we have any official standard or policy that states students are allowed to use certain percentage of AI generated content in their responses? At a university, I was told that some universities do allow limited use of AI, provided students use it appropriately and not to generate their entire assessment. Of course, submitting work that is 100% AI generated is not acceptable. Just wondering whether there is similar guideline or standard that applies in RTOs. Is there any standard guideline or a percentage?
Okay. I think this is really great question. Interesting question as well. And what I see that if you see from regulator lens, they haven't set any standard. Okay. What their concern is, we want the work that you've been passed through or make it competent it's a genuine student work, and do they have got the knowledge and skill for the unit that is mentioned on training.gov.in. That's their underlining part. Now, as an RTO, you need to have your own structure and system that this is how we're making sure. So if we're doing a limited use, that what limited use means. If it's not defined correctly, it creates a problem. So therefore, I always say, or we always say that RTO need to sit down and clear their own process and system based on their own cohort, and asking this underlining question that regulator is looking for. Said, if I put this approach, let's say limited use, how will able to justify SQAS question when they come in the audit? And then you need to customize your own process and system that way. You might come up and say, okay, we give 10% as a grace amount, because then we put that content in 5 different tools, and AI making those mistakes for that variation is 10% allowed. But then you have to back up by your meeting minutes and the evidence around it. If you have a relevant documents around that and you're making a judgment, then it makes sense. And if it's not, then it will not make sense, and you won't be able to defend yourself.
Thank you, Ben.
Marcus, you want to add anything?
No, I think the point you make about
Yeah.
defending, I think that's probably critical because, any judgments that we make, we have to actually defend it. And as you say, it is a policy decision without a question, and I think it would vary depending on the nature of the qualifications that we're delivering. Some are very, they'll be, you could use AI a lot. You will need to actually, use AI, but of course, then it ties very, very closely to, to the actual unit of competence. What I've seen is many units of competence. There's some very, very specific learnings in there. The performance criteria, the elements that are tabled. This is what we're actually assessing them against. And also to whatever the outcomes are going to be, performance criteria, and knowledge. Now, if you just give it open out to AI, it will bring in a whole bunch of other things. It just does. It'll go out looking for things, criteria, which sits outside of what's actually, content within within there. So it's a difficult one. So I think it's kind of my kind of view there. I think you're absolutely right there, Ben. We've got to defend it. And what are we defending against? And as you say, you've just mentioned the things that it is their own work. There's rules of assessment, principles of assessment, rules of evidence. They've got to meet that, but that's all tied to the unit of competence. And, and then I think the only caveat that I would see is because I've worked across this sort of, the spectrum, up to postgrads and so forth, is that it really depends on, sometimes it depends on the actual qualification. And what you're really looking for. If we're looking for real creativity and innovation, you're going to find that they probably are going to need to use AI, to develop research and materials. I know sometimes I specify that they must use AI, and I want to see the prompts, and I want to see the outcomes, and or the output, and then I want to see if the escalation of the prompts. Have they taken it? Have they questioned it? Have they moved it through there? Which means, well, if you've got a prompt there which has been escalated 3, 4, 5, 6 times, what percentage of of it is that? So it's not an easy question to answer because we're trying to put a very defined metric around it. So I think there's a few variables in there. But what you've mentioned there, Ben, I mean that's the core of it. That's the engine of it. They've got to meet the the principles and the rules. And it's got to be specific to that particular qual. If they do that, we're looking good.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcus. Just to conclude this session, I think there was a question that we asked initially, like which place Marcus belongs to. I think people were mostly getting Finland or the other place, and somebody said Melbourne as well. So kudos to you to say that as well. It's the most livable city, not the happiest city in the world. But then we had to give a kind of like a hint to somebody, and one of the person has actually got the answer correct, which is Magda Perez, if I'm pronouncing your name correct. I don't know, it's a he or a she. And we made it, just to make it a little bit interesting, we said whosoever answers the question right will get a coffee shout out from us, from our side. So probably he or she, Magda, gets that. And feel free to write your email address in the chat options and we'll make sure that we send you one across. But yeah, it was just kind of engaging somebody and just to check everyone is not sleeping and they're awake and they can type in the chat options. So thank you so much, Marcus and Ben. We really appreciate, I think, Marcus, your insights and most important, the time that you have taken out to share your knowledge with our people out here. And we hope to see you quite soon, often and more in the webinars and share more knowledge. Thank you, Ben, as always. I think it's really good to people wait to ask questions. That's I feel that's the most favorite part among the webinar. You're quite enthusiastic when you answer the question. Just the smile changes on your face. So it's good to share the knowledge. It's good to share the real life examples. And I think that makes people really happy towards the end of the week. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Ben. And thank you everyone who joined in today. Have a safe weekend and safe end of financial year sales. And if you haven't purchased or looked into your RTO well-being, just feel free to contact us. We've still got a couple of more days to go through it, and then we'll help you across. So thank you, everyone.
See you now. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Look
Thanks,
forward to
team.
see you next time.
Oh, look forward to it.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye now.